power.
Nice Mike.
Ooh, I see it moving.
Just go, Mike.
Here we go.
Shake it up, pop, pop, pop.
Season, but somebody had this great idea about
Shake.
having fires in June. Oh, come on. Come on.
Give it to him just a one time.
Used to never have a problem with this sort of thing. I call it performance anxiety.
One of these podcasts, you gonna start us off with a guitar jingle?
Dude, I haven't played guitar in so long. I've just had that forever. I took classes in high school. I never got very good at it. I still couldn't tune one very good. It's like I don't know if I it's weird, you know. I played trumpet for a really long time, and I could tune that just fine. But for some reason, when it comes trying to tune a guitar, I just can't quite get. It's like I don't hear the pitch right or something. It's weird. But now that was a long lost childhood fantasy that I just still keep it around.
I still fantasize about it a little bit. It's actually one of the things I kind of want to learn as an adult.
Yeah, Nolan takes lessons.
He does?
Yeah.
God, all these signs point to Nolan shouldn't be leaving us.
They ain't cheap. I know. Well, maybe we'll get lucky and he'll come back.
You never know. Everything happens for a reason, right?
This is true. I stopped trying to control my life a long time ago because it doesn't do you any good. You just got to let it go and, you know, embrace what you have, appreciate the times that you've had with what you've had, and hope that things work out for the best, and they should. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Let go of the chaos. Got a needy dog today?
I do, yeah. And he's not like this anytime except for
like, but Dad,
when I start recording.
But Dad.
He gets it.
You love that camera more than me.
He gets it, I think.
He gets that you love the camera more than him.
Well, dude, the only thing hot on my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
The only thing hot on my mind right now is got this target shoot coming up. Turns out Josh Jones can't come.
I double booked myself, unfortunately.
The old double book trick.
The prior engagement is what I need to commit to. So I'm going to a wedding, and I didn't pay attention to the dates when I said, "Hey, let's do this," and oh yeah, I'll rent a house. And
it's not your wedding, is it?
No, it's not my wedding. No. No. Long way, long.
Yeah.
If ever. I don't know. I've done that. Don't know if I need to ever do that again.
Yeah.
To be honest. But yeah, I have to go to a wedding, and it's on a Saturday, and it's 8 hours from here. So there's no way I could even like do one of the days. We didn't pop.
I know. I just was looking at that. I was like, dude, what's going on here? Is that first pod?
Good stuff.
No, that's like pod number 10, man.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't count.
Yeah. Well, I don't know either, but I think it is.
There's
Put a couple on your channel, a couple on our channel.
Yeah, there were 4 on my channel, and I don't know how many we've got on ours now. And then we've got a decent amount in the hopper.
Yeah, we got dude, our hopper's stocked.
I still have to edit the last one here. I haven't done it yet, so I'll have to do that tonight or something. Even though we're way ahead, I still want to get it done and get it off my list.
The only thing hot on my brains is this whole target thing. So, you know, I've kind of tried to slow roll archery because I just want to learn slowly, and I've burnt myself out on stuff in the past by like diving in too deep.
Yeah.
So I've kind of always kept the target thing in the back. Like, I don't need a target bow. I need to learn to shoot my hunting bow. Okay, now I've shot a couple thousand arrows, and maybe a target bow would be cool. Oh, I kind of got this target hybrid hunting bow. Most people will call it a target bow, but I think hybrid bow would be the category I'd put it in.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think I call it a hybrid bow. Target for the right person, hunting for the right person. Definitely middle of the road for both, for the right person, for me. And
well, most of the major manufacturers make a bow that would qualify as that.
Yeah.
They do. And you'd be surprised how many of the higher level people that use those brands use those bows.
And the other day we just kind of went full send, which was fun. Went full send, setting it up, call it a lens in the front.
Yeah, I gave you some magnification.
Yeah, gave me a little, got me all up on that sight.
Some long stabs.
Yep, long stabilizer on the front. Got a couple arrows through it, and I was like, oh God, there's something to this.
Yeah, the farther you move the weight away from your hand, it's pretty incredible
all
what
of a
it
sudden,
does.
My float's just kind of slower, a little tighter. My arrows are hitting a little tighter, but it's honeymoon phase, which is a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might have been better to wait like till 4 days before your tournament to do all that.
Could have been.
Yeah.
And then, I'm excited about the app too, running your
Archer's Mark.
Archer's Mark, yeah.
Yeah.
Running your sight on a granulated scale on one side and then calculating it through the app. And the app's basically going to pump out to the yard for your...
Yeah, you can tweak it a lot. Like you can manipulate it, you can change it. And the beautiful thing of it being on your phone is you can change it from anywhere. You don't have to be able to print off a tape and stick a new tape on your bow, which is what Archer's Advantage was originally made for, which was in like the 90s, I think. It's been around for a really long time. And that was for making a sight tape of whatever kind of sight tape you wanted. You could have it go as far as you want. You could change the scale thickness. You could change the size of the numbers. If you got old eyes, I mean, you could do all kinds of stuff to it and manipulate the outcomes of what it's making, but it was for printing a sight tape. Well, when target sights have always had granulated scales on them. So you have what they'd call a cut chart. So you'd print off like the numbers and keep them in your pocket. So instead of putting a sight tape on there, you'd have this little chart that basically is doing what your phone's doing, but it just gave you the actual numbers. But it wasn't something that was on a handheld device, and it wasn't something that you could change after you printed those off. You were stuck with those. Archer's Mark came out and gave you that. And now anybody who's shooting target sights in any kind of a target scale of tournament is using that, like, period. Like, there's, like, nobody is not. I still need to go back and research the guy who reached out to me who said they were making their own and wanted to see if I'd be in the beta for it.
Yeah, when I hopped into the app, I could totally see how it could be cleaned up. I mean, you can tell it's older. And, it's probably not a tech company that invented it, right? But
well, I'm sure it's an archery guy.
it's functional, right?
Yeah.
And it works.
It does the job.
I can see how there could be an update or a competitive product coming, but it's all very cool and very exciting to me, man. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be neat if you could take the scale of what that is and have it in a sight period, so you didn't actually need the device. But
that's what I thought about.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that's ever coming down the road.
Well, I mean, there's some really advanced stuff, but the issue you run into is it's all going to be electronic, which means it's all going to be battery operated, which means you're not going to be able to use it in a percentage of the states because they don't allow electrical things. Garmin's is incredible. Like, theirs really, 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 really works.
Works really well.
Oh, yeah. Like, you data input what goes into it.
Do you know, is it doing your yardage cuts on downhills and slopes?
I believe it does, yeah, if I remember right. But
that'd be interesting.
You point it and hit the button and it lights up where on the scale that it needs to actually functionally point.
Yeah.
So there's a mirror in it with a line in it, and somewhere up and down that line, a dot lights up for what you're shooting. Whatever you point at. It's clear, it's simple. You push a button, point, shoot, boom, done. And it's rangefinder built into it. So you're done. There's no calculating, there's no fucky. That's cheating.
That's like a very Gen 1 product too, though, where it's cool, but it is bulky. It's kind of ugly.
It's big. It's not aesthetically pleasing.
It's a tank.
From the artiste in you.
Yeah.
But nothing works as well that I've seen. It works really freaking good. And the $1,300 to $1,400 price tag reflects what it is and how well it works. But you bolt that thing on a bow and set it up right, it's kind of bomb proof. But yeah, it's strictly a hunting tool. It's not the precision click archery stuff for target.
Well, we got an interesting question on our one of our recent podcasts.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a good one because it kind of brings you back to square one. We talked a lot in a recent podcast about tuning, all the ins and outs, and I'm sure there'll be many iterations of that. But a guy said, well, what is tuned? What does it mean when your bow is tuned? What does that mean to you?
Is that my definition?
Yeah. What's your definition?
My broadheads and field points hit in the same spot.
I thought that was going to be your definition.
That's a tuned bow.
Yeah.
Because it won't do that if it's not.
Okay. Now, Drew is like, hey, I'm going to get my broadheads and field points hitting the same spot, and then I'm going to come back and shoot through paper. He's going to see a bullet hole through paper, right? Likely?
Yeah. You're going to have a really hard time not. I
Yeah.
mean, those two won't. So the reason those two hit in the same spot is because the arrow's bending the appropriate flex, and they're bending the appropriate distance from the knock forward and the point forward in that bend point, or the node. If those are perfect, the arrow nodes are the points that the arrow actually doesn't change its point on. So as that arrow's bending back and forth, there's a point in the back and a point in the front that aren't actually moving. They're staying in a straight line. Everything else is bending around it, right? So if you get those set just right and those are tweaked just right, that arrow will fly straight perfectly straight. And that's what your broadhead is doing at that point, is if the arrow's coming out of the bow literally perfectly straight and those 2 points stay in that straight line, that broadhead will also be in that when it's done, when it stops flexing back and forth. And that's where you run into the difference. So to me, a tuned bow is my broadhead and field point hitting the same spot, and there's no point in him shooting through paper at that point. And I wouldn't care if it had 1.5 inch tear at that point. If I can shoot a field point and a broadhead at 20 yards, 50 yards, 80 yards, and 100 yards, and they're hitting in the same spot, I don't give a shit what anything else looks like. The whole point of what you're trying to do is get your field point and your broadhead to hit in the same spot. And it won't hit in the same spot if it's not transferring energy equally, which means you're carrying the energy.
Yeah, and
which is why that's so important too. People overlook that. It's not just, well, I just want my sight to hit where I'm pointed. No, you want those two to hit in the same spot, so all the energy that you're producing at the muzzle or out of the bow stays in the arrow. If those two are way off from each other, it's losing energy as it travels at a greater rate.
And you kind of glazed over something important there. You said 20, 50, 80, 100. But basically, your gap between your field point and your broadhead is only going to extend out as your range gets further, right? So
if it's out of tune, yes.
If it's out of tune. So at range, it's exposing more of your tune.
If it's a spine issue, not a tune issue, a lot of times they'll have the same gap and they'll just keep going.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like they'll have a 3-inch right impact that you can't get rid of. A lot of times that's actually just the arrow spine. But the right tuned configuration, so that's cam orientation, rest position, and the right spined arrow, which is why you don't just tune the arrow to the bow. You have to do both. You have to have the right spine arrow and the right percentages of balance and the bow orientated correctly so they travel in the same spot all the way out.
And fact or fiction, some of these schools where people are saying, well, just tune your arrow to the bow. Some of them are covering up tuning faults in their bow with their arrow.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they're trying to. What
Mask.
you're doing in that scenario is you're typically overspining it on purpose because the arrow is bending inconsistently around the bow because the bow isn't set correctly to send the arrow straight down the middle of it.
Yeah, that makes sense to
like
me.
it should.
You're taking
right?
a stiffer board.
So you're putting a stiffer arrow in there to try to compensate for it because a stiffer arrow won't flex as far. And one of the things my dad showed me early when I was young, when I was trying to get my bow to tune, which it was a compound bow, and he's a traditional guy. He said, just go grab that stiff arrow over there. And it hit in the same spot. He's like, you're good. Bye. Well, yeah, that's the cheat. You use way too stiff of an arrow, and all of a sudden it seems to work okay. You're still not transferring energy as efficiently as you could. And that to me is a real big problem. I mean, everyone's fixated on shooting through an animal when hunting, right? I mean, that's the concern. I want to shoot through. I don't just want to hit him. I want to go through him. Well, that's a transfer of energy, right? And that's where this whole heavy arrow mantra comes from, is I need to get through him, so I need a heavy arrow. It's like, no, you don't really need a heavy arrow. You need a broadhead that penetrates well, and you need a projectile or an arrow that is adequately spined, correctly tuned, and then the arrow tuned correctly for the bow as well. You get all those things together, you no longer need 600, 800 grains.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know from a percentage, just like how much efficiency you were losing with, I don't know how we could quantify it, with maybe like a 1-inch paper tear or a 2-inch paper tear.
Well, I was hoping to find a device, I was scouring the internet, that I could shoot into that it would tell me the impact energy. So you could deliberately do things like that and see how much worse it was.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting.
Set it up at like 50 yards and, set it at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Yes, I know you can do the math and figure it out, but I want something that actually tells me it's physically hit that hard.
That'd be
Not
way
that
cooler.
It theoretically will do, but what it will physically actually hit with force. I found a tool that measured like your punching power. Like when you hit it, it would tell you what it did. And I kept looking at that going, I wonder if you put the right tip on your arrow, if you could shoot at that and measure a difference. That it wouldn't just error, right? I almost bought it. I was like, I bet you that'd work. Now, what you can do as well is you can measure your velocity downrange. That'll give you an idea. But I wanted something that actually said, hey, is this hitting? So in theory, you could do the same thing. Take your bow, perfectly tune it, shoot it through a crony at 50 yards, walk back over to the paper, deliberately give it a 1-inch paper tear, figure out where you're impacting it, and then go shoot through the chronograph again. Should come up with the same thing. if you're losing energy, your velocity will slow down faster, right? Because it's not storing the energy. So you can do that with just a chronograph. And supposedly that radar thing over there, but I want to test both because I still don't 100% believe that that's going to give you accurate readings compared to an actual projectile going through a measured distance, because a chronograph is measuring from how long it took to go through here to here in a static position. That's not arguable, right? Where I think that can be a little arguable, because how's it effectively measuring it 50, 60 yards away from me? And it's using like sound somewhat of it. Like you have to have a trigger, because the force of the noise coming off of a gun it'll measure, but off of a bow it won't. You have to actually put a trigger in it that senses that it went off at the bow. So I'm not sure exactly the engineering behind what makes that accurate, but I kind of want to test both. But I got to figure out how to use it first. Still haven't done
Call
that.
that lab radar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought a lab radar and an archery trigger because it doesn't work without it, supposedly. But that's what most of these experts of, downrange energy are using to measure that. And I'm not convinced that's actually accurate. But it would be really interesting to see measurements of adequately spined arrow, inadequately spined arrow. But they weigh the same. How much faster is it at 50 yards? Arrow weighs the same, should be the same speed if adequate energy doesn't matter, or adequate spine doesn't matter, or it does matter. FOC, the only one you're really going to effectively measure if everything else is equal, is wind drift.
Now, part of this, maybe older school or one school of thought, is there's a sweet spot for tuning fixed blades, and there might be some truth to that, where it might be easier to tune at a certain feet per second, but part of that school might say there's a point where you can't really tune fixed broadheads. Is that true?
There's a school that says that, and that's a bullshit.
Yeah. Bullshit.
If I
can we get a sound effect for that? Bullshit.
If I can tune a broadhead at over 400 foot per second on a fixed blade, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just easier.
Testing the extremes is a great way to prove or disprove things, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I've tuned at least a dozen setups over 350 with fixed blades. So how's that
And when
possible?
you say tuned, and now we can say that the broadhead is hitting the field point
broadhead
at range.
hitting the field point out to 100.
Wow.
Or it's close to that. You get some drag difference between a field point if you're not shooting the right field points
I've heard
versus
that,
the right
yeah.
broadhead. There is a difference.
Yeah.
Normally, you don't see it till past 80, so I should probably say out to 70, 80 yards. If you can get them to hit in the same spot, 70, 80 yards, traditional field point, whether it's a glue-in one-piece point or a Saunders-style point, one of my points, all that. If the broadhead and the field point should hit in the same spot out to 80.
Well, and most people, right? There's exceptions. There's the Bodie Turners and stuff that can shoot out further, but most people that shoot well,
His broadhead and his field point's still not going to hit in the same spot.
Yeah, I know,
past
but I'm
them,
saying
though.
most people will shoot well to 60, 70 yards anyway, or 50 or 40 or however far they can group the two arrows together or whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those longer distances, not only will the drag affect it, but most people practically aren't going to be touching tips at that kind of yardage.
No, I wouldn't think. You're going to have a little bit of a groupage there.
Yeah.
But you can consistently see a difference at a certain point. It amazed me. I didn't really realize it until I got out past like 90, 100. And then, or I'd sight it in with field points, and I'd shoot a broadhead out. I was sighting stuff into like 150 because that's how far I could shoot it.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of doing it. And then stick a broadhead on, you just lost 10 yards. Like, holy crap. It's a lot.
Yeah, let's give these people I was thinking about this. Let's give these people some direction on stabilizers, because we've done videos on stabilizers, but there's just so much witchcraft when you talk about it. Well, set them here, set them there for this and that. Like, what's a good starting spot for hunting bow stabilizers?
It depends on if you're going to use a single or two. If you're going to, let's say you're going to use
talk about some nuance to the single, because the single's kind of cool. I've seen you run the offset a couple times, right?
Yeah, I have an offset stabilizer bar that I made it was actually the first thing I ever made, like myself. In
Like
the
your
archery
first
world.
mad scientist invention?
Yeah, and I incorporated a wrist sling with it because people ran a wrist sling anyway. There was more hop in a bow back then, so it was way more common to have a wrist sling.
More jump out of your hand?
Yeah, people still use them, but they're not as common because back then, if you didn't have a wrist sling, your bow would end up on the floor unless you gripped it. If you shot with a nice relaxed hand like you should and you let it go off in a surprised fashion, your If you're truly mentally don't know what's going off, then your brain's not sending a signal to this hand to say, hey, grab your bow. It's going to fall on the ground, right? So if you didn't have a wrist sling, your bow would literally fall on the ground if you didn't know what was going off. It was pretty easy to tell people who shot with an open hand and fired it without a finger sling or a wrist sling. If their bow wasn't on the ground, they knew it was going off and they were grabbing it. But I incorporated a wrist sling in it because it was a common item, and I just made a bar that sat over farther to screw your stabilizer on the left-hand side of your bow because everything was bolted onto the right. And back then, it was way worse than it is today. Quivers stuck out farther, sights stuck out farther, rests stuck out farther, everything stuck out farther.
Yeah, we've gotten pretty spoiled these last couple of years where everything's just kind of went zoom right into the side of the bow.
My original one was like you moved the stabilizer over almost that far to get it to where when you held it in your hand, it didn't lean left or right anymore. Like if you screw your stabilizer on the center part of the bow and open up your hand, your bow was going to fall over because everything's bolted on that side. You simply just moved it over. The one I make now is for most modern bows, and it's about that far is all about the movement, and that settles most bows out. Then at that point, I like to run a stabilizer that is relatively long for a couple of reasons. One, when you load your bow with your arrow's sticking out in front of your bow like 18, 20 inches, right? So your stabilizer being short isn't going to do you any good if your arrow's in there as far as like making it easier to maneuver. And most of the time when I'm worried about that, I'm worried about it with an arrow in it. Past that, I like to make sure that it doesn't stick out past my elbow because I'm going to hold my grip with my bow, my stabilizer coming this way. So as long as it doesn't go past my elbow, it's not awkward to maneuver. So myself, I have longer arms. I tend to run about a 15, somewhere around a 15-inch stabilizer because, like I said, it doesn't stick out past my elbow. It's not awkward, and my arrow, when loaded, is sticking out longer than that. So I tend to run a straight 15. And when I run a longer bar like that, I may dabble with something a little longer here in the near future, but right now I'm running a 15, and when I run it like that, I don't need much weight in the front.
I think 15 is a pretty sweet spot for hunting, unless you're hunting from an indoor ground blind.
Yeah, but with that weight, I probably only need like an ounce or two, and it feels like a lot.
Because as a rule of thumb, the longer the bar, the more weight impacts.
Yeah, it feels drastically more, which is why when you watch target archers, they got a 30-inch front and a 12 to 15-inch back.
Like me,
because it's
dude.
moving. Yeah, right.
Or a long bar.
Yeah, you're moving it away from your hands, and it makes a more drastic effect. You can use less weight in that scenario, or the weight can seem like a drastic amount more, which is what most target guys are doing. They're using a lot of weight and moving it away from their hands. And the reason they're doing that is something heavy like that. Once you get your object, your point of aim up to the target, it's harder to pull it away from the target. The heavier it is, the more extreme it is, it sits more. It doesn't mean it doesn't move. It just means it moves slower, and once it gets there, it stays there longer. So you're more likely to hit the middle of the target when you're committing to shooting. That's the whole point. And if it wasn't awkward to carry a 30-inch stabilizer and a 15-inch sidebar around hunting, you bet your ass I'd use it because it is noticeable as you got to experience. Like, it feels different.
I think it's also noticeable for just learning your shot because you can kind of like, if you draw your bow funky, you get this like recoil effect.
Yeah,
right?
It makes it wobble.
Yeah, you get like a wobble if you draw your bow. You torque your bow or you do something goofy, you get like more feedback. So it's not a bad thing for feedback. It's giving you a little more feedback.
Yeah, it definitely. The method that I use when I shoot was learned through stuff like that. And it's largely because the more you move things around, the longer it takes you to get back to full draw. With that stuff, it amplifies it. So I get my body positioned the way I wanted it ahead of time because it lowered the amplification of those things. So getting the bow drawn and anchored and fired took less time if you had everything preset. And that will really get you to pay attention to how you hold your bow, how you bring it up before you draw it back, how you're drawing it back this way. There's a reason why when you watch my motion, it looks so fluid and smooth. It's because I'm trying to hold a freaking 30-inch stabilizer and a 15-inch sidebar back in another realm, and you have to do it that way, or it starts doing this junk all over the place when you're trying to hold steady. Or it takes 5-6 seconds to stop moving when you get it back to full draw. The front end goes wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, and if there's anything the thing that makes me shoot the worst is getting a long way into my shot cycle. Like when that shot's not breaking, you get low on oxygen. Maybe I'm a little more susceptible to it than most people or whatever, but
Maybe you're just more aware of it than most people.
yeah, I don't know. But when I get laid into that shot cycle, it's like, oh God. And
Oxygen deprivation is a bad thing, like a bad thing. Your brain functions worse. Your eyes function worse. Your muscles function worse. There's a reason you want it at 7 to 11 seconds, not 15 to 20 seconds. You just can't do it nearly as good. The longer you sit back there, the worse it is. Anything you can do to focus on shortening your time at draw is a good thing, i.e., where's my front arm sit? Where's my shoulder sit? Where's my head sit? Where's this hand sit? How quickly can I get into here? Am I not doing this junk for 3 seconds?
getting to your click right away.
Get into your click right away. Get into your anchor. Go ahead. Roll. Go. Boom. All right, cool. The sooner you can get to that sequence, the more accurate, more consistent it's going to be. And if it takes you, 6 months of training to shave 3 seconds off of your shot time, that's huge benefit.
Yeah,
in a target realm.
I haven't done it intentionally, but I mean, it was intentionally. I've tried to get to click faster, but we'd always laugh about Justin in the shop, Justin, the manager, who's been on the podcast. People always joke about him saying Justin comes to click before he even touches his face, which is pretty true. He comes to click notoriously fast.
Yeah.
And I've caught myself recently these last couple of weeks where I'm basically hitting click as I hit anchor, and it's like, it's been good.
Shave some time.
Yeah.
You want to throw another piece in there? Or
another shrimp on the Barbie?
It's only been, I mean, I know I lose time of how long we've been here, but it ain't been that long yet, right?
No, it ain't been that long.
Yeah, because that'll go out completely. So you might want to leave the door sitting like it hasn't gone yet, so it gets some airflow. Put the handle all the way down. No. There you go. And then let it sit gapped, and then it'll pull a little bit.
She'll
Get
grab.
the flame going.
She'll grab.
It's hot in there. Oh, look at that. Boom. Poppy. Good stuff. So yeah, it's target archery is so relevant and important to every archer. They just don't realize it. Having a definite point of aim and a definite known distance when you shoot eliminates the, oh gosh, it's very common to shoot like IBO 3D, right? Yeah, you can close that. IBO 3D and have an unknown distance and an unknown reference of point of aim and cover up that you didn't shoot well and be like, oh yeah, I must have misjudged my yardage, or oh yeah, man, that must have been where I was aiming. I must have been aiming at the wrong spot. You eliminate a definite point of aim and you eliminate known yardage, right? Unknown yardage, and make it known. Guess what? You missed because of you. Because of how you shot your bow, not, well, I didn't aim in the right spot, or, oh, I'm off by 4 yards. I guess my yardage wrong, that kind of thing. Because in that kind of a tournament, you can't like legally use a rangefinder. So you can't even check that you're off. Some people might sneak one on and do it anyway, but then that's the same guy that's probably going to get accused of cheating later if he happens to win because he's carrying a rangefinder with him, right? Known yardages, known distances, some of the best things a person can do to get better at archery. I'm not saying hunting, better at archery, target archery, whether it's NFAA field. Indoor 20 is great in the winter because it forces you to work on your form, your fundamental form, because every other variable is gone. It's the same distance every time. It's inside. There's never a lighting issue. It's not sunny or rainy or windy or any of that crap, right? You're standing on a line 20 yards from a target. It's the same target every time. The circle's the same size. You've eliminated everything other than you working through your shot, which is great training in the winter. But getting outside at different distances, uphills, downhills, side hills, lighting conditions that are fucky, I mean, all those things are huge, but they're more huge with a definite point of aim. You know what you're pointing at. You know how much you missed by because you were physically pointing at a dot. It's hugely helpful, and you will see frequently people that shoot 3D that don't have known distance or don't have a definite point of aim that get good, and they eventually quit and go to the other format.
Well, and the counter argument is like, okay, well, I'm a hunter. I should only shoot.
So you don't own a rangefinder?
No, I mean, I'm a hunter. I should only shoot and practice with my hunting bow.
Well, sure, but that doesn't mean you can't go shoot target archery with your hunting bow. Just enter a hunting class.
No, I know, but that too. But what I'm saying speaks to like having other equipment also helps you translate back to your hunting bow because you're getting like those longer bars is a perfect example of getting more feedback on your shot. right? And then all of a sudden you go back to your hunting bow and you're more efficient at drawing your hunting bow because you practiced with something that was different. Like all these things aren't mutually exclusive. There's a lot of skill transferring from one to the other.
Yep.
And there's a reason that all these really good target archers, they're not screwing up in the field a lot. Like,
no,
they're
proud.
All of those reps are all, better reps than most of us are getting year round. And I mean, how are you going to be in a tournament rep versus, shooting in your backyard rep, right? Like,
very different.
So
very different.
A lot of skill carryover from one to the other.
Guaranteed, yeah. And you'd be surprised how far those guys are shooting when they're hunting. They're shooting farther than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably don't talk about it, but it's amazing the skill that those people really possess.
It is.
But that skill is honed by those disciplines. And all of those people that are really good are typically shooting at some point throughout the year at a definite point of aim and known yardages. Yeah, you get a variety of difference, but visual dots, knowing what you're aiming at and knowing how far away it is makes a difference in your overall skill and ability.
Yeah.
It just does. It'd be like playing golf, but you couldn't see the hole ever, right? And you had, what's the best way to put that? Yeah, you couldn't, there was never a flag.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know where you're hitting the ball.
Be a lot less precise.
Exactly. And then you could be like, well, yeah, that's where I was aiming in your head.
You'd be making broad strokes.
Right? Yeah. You should have a definite point of aim always. I mean, for any kind of thing that you're trying to get better at, you really need a definite point of aim. Now, granted, I get the purpose of why it originally started that way. There isn't a definite point of aim on an animal. So a 3D target shouldn't have a definite point of aim that's visual. And that was a great training tool when you weren't keeping scores. But once you started keeping scores, then you put dots on it, and then you don't put the dots in the right spot to begin with that are etched in the target, but you still can't see them. So now you're training people to shoot kind of in the wrong spot because that's where you want to put the dots. I mean, it's not ideal. It shouldn't be a target discipline.
That's been one of my challenges when I show up to some targets that it's real vague. Your point of aim is real vague.
Yeah. Or if you turn the target at a given angle, now you're forcing me to shoot different than my brain knows I probably should.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to hold over here
too.
Or hold over there.
Yeah.
And what is that teaching you? How is that benefiting you at all? It's trying to make it more challenging, and I get that. But then at that point, why don't you just put a definite point of aim on the target then?
Yeah, I don't know. Give me a freaking orange dot on there. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish it all did. I think it should. Because I think at the end of the day, we need to do things that make us better, right? And I don't think indefinite points of aim make us better. It makes us worse. Take away the yardage guessing, have a definite point of aim. All archers get better because you just eliminate a bunch of excuses that they're going to have in their head as to why they missed, right? Oh, man, I must have got my yardages off. If I had $1 every time I heard somebody say, oh, I guessed that one wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. No, you didn't. You just didn't make a good shot.
Yeah.
And how are you learning? And I made that transition at one point in my life. I shot a lot of 3D, and I started shooting dots. And oh, my God, I didn't realize what I didn't realize.
When you say shooting dots, are you referring to Vegas or?
No, just target archery in general. A definite spot in a competition.
Yep.
Right? A dot. Now, that can be anything. That can be a NFAA Safari, which if you've never shot an NFAA Safari, which is what Redding is, great format. It's an animal, so you're still shooting at an animal, but it's got a dot on it, a visual dot that you can see. The OPA format tournament that you're going to, right, the top pin, has dots painted on the target. Like you know where the dot is. Great format. Love that. When you take the definite point of aim away, it just makes it harder for the average person to get better. And that's the thing I struggle with is most people are doing this for fun to try to get better, but there's no definite point of aim. So they're not really getting as better as they could in most of these sort of formats because there's so much excuses of why.
Dude, when are we going to host a local tourney?
God, shit. Like I got time
Add
for
it to
that.
the list.
Like I got time for that, man. I don't know. Have the business like double or triple and not have to be involved at all anymore, then maybe. But I'd like to see more of that. I mean, even like the tacks and whatnot, they don't have dots on them, but that's for fun, and it's not a competitive score. But it's still, without a definite point of aim, you don't know exactly what you were aiming at. So in your brain, you're trying to trigger, did I make a good shot or not? Right?
You're definitely winging it a lot more.
You don't know.
You know.
You just don't know.
Yeah.
And if we knew, you would improve more because you would know how you screwed up better. You know, or you happen to hit the dot. Well, but what if you were actually aiming over there because you thought it was over there, but you hit the dot, so your brain goes, yeah, I did it. It's like, well, yeah, but if you hit this far to the right of where you thought you were aiming, but you don't know that till you get up there. Your brain just goes, oh, yeah, I made a great shot. Woo! I want people to get better. That's the point. I wish there were more formats available for people to get better.
Yeah, that's cool. But I mean, in the last 10 years, there's a lot more availability.
Way more.
Of 3D fun, you know, more mountain shoots. Like those things have, that's been a growing niche for sure.
Yeah, it's great, and I would like to see more and more of it. I'd like to see, we have ski resorts all over the country that sit vacant in the summer a lot.
Largely vacant, yeah.
Largely vacant. I mean, mountain bikers use them, but that's about it, and there's not that many people up there. And the funny part is most of the time the gondolas are running. Or
and they're kind of cheap bastards anyway. Like, how much are they going to pay to ride the hill?
I can't imagine it's much. I've never paid it myself, but I can't imagine it's all that much.
Yeah.
But you have all these resorts everywhere. Why aren't there tournaments on them? Like, it's a great, I mean, whoever thought it up originally, I don't know if TAC thought of it first or who thought of it first, of using a ski resort for an archery tournament to where you ride a chairlift up the hill and you shoot your way down the hill. You get angles, you get elevation change, you get a lot of change in environment.
Exercise,
but not brutal exercise.
Shit,
you know, the ones where they tell you to run uphill instead of downhill to get to it. That's brutal. But
a little walk at the end of TAC was pretty brutal.
Yeah, I agree. That was hard. But and I appreciated that pushed you a lot to the end of the day.
And I appreciated a cold beer after that. You know what I'm saying?
Several. Yeah, they were very tasty. At that point, I feel like I earned it too that day. That was a lot of hiking, and the tail end of going up sucked. But it's a neat format. I'd love to see more of it.
Yeah,
like love to see more of it. I just ask that there's a definite point of aim at the target, and that's it. The rest of it's cool.
What do you got? What do you got for bucket list hunts? Do you have? I started brainstorming about that more.
I'd love to go caribou hunting.
But explain that more, like a DIY caribou, archery caribou.
When the 20-year-old me would have been DIY, I'm never going to do a guide or any of that junk or whatnot. But the older you get, the more you realize how difficult success can be. Yeah, how difficult success can be, and also going to an area you've never been and understanding, like especially with caribou, which is one of the ones that's always been on my mind. Like if I could go hunting caribou every year, I'd be in heaven because that just looks like it would be so fun. It's my kind of hunting. It's ambush style hunting. My favorite style of hunting is figuring out where the animals are going and getting there first and waiting for them to come by you. I love that sort of hunting. And the migrating caribou thing is a lot like that. The difficult part is the migration is not always at the same time in the same area and that sort of thing. So your success is largely dictated by somebody in the area that's paying attention to the migration and knowing when you need to go. And a lot of times you're booked out from here to here, and that's it. I'd love to figure out a way to effectively do that and be able to hit that at the right times. I don't know why caribou has always intrigued me so much, but I've always really dug the idea.
Their antlers are damn cool. I've always really thought that.
Yeah, their antlers are cool, and once again, it's like a
country's
migrating.
Cool.
Yeah, it's open.
Yeah,
open. Probably a bit
Tundra.
of a poke, and I like shooting a little farther away. You know, that's always been something I've been pretty good at and enjoy. But still want to, like figure out where they're coming from, where they're going, and cut them off. That's most of my success in hunting has been more that direction. Even though I do a lot of ground blind and tree stand hunting because the success rate's high because you're sitting, being patient, being quiet, and waiting. And at the end of the day, I hunt for food, and I want to come home with food. So typically, whatever way the success rate's higher, I tend to gravitate towards in most of my hunting. But I would love to go caribou hunting. I mean, there isn't an animal that I don't want to hunt, but for one reason or another. And maybe it's because it's a little more obtainable by the average guy, because I'm not rich and I don't ever anticipate being rich to where I can afford to do, sheep. That's ridiculously expensive. But caribou, I think, is still relatively achievable on a working man's budget.
Yeah, and there's people that DIY it still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I know you can go up to the Hall Road in Alaska and hunt like a mile either direction of the road. And that's totally doable. I don't know if it's as good as it used to be or whatnot, but you can, there's lots of DIY options. I just don't know if I would. If I was going to, I've noticed as I get older, my time is a little more valuable than my money. It just is, because you only have so much of it. And I used to DIY it to save money, right? Well, do you want to go and be successful, or do you want to go and hope you're successful?
Yeah, and I think I used to have this picture in my head that when you went with a guide, it was often the guide telling you what to do. And I think there are situations when a guide needs to do that, but also they can just be your teammate.
For sure.
Right? Like they can help be your teammate, and they can be the best possible teammate because they know the area intimately. And you might just develop a new friend, Well,
I have one of my old employees that actually lives in Alaska, and we talked about it a while ago, and I still haven't hit him up on it. But Justin Doucette, or Deuce, as everybody called him. He was the first. He was the first guy I hired to.
He was your first Justin?
No, he was my first person I hired to help me with the online store, with the online sales. And he had been a fishing guide in Alaska in the busy seasons for fishing in the rivers and whatnot. And then he'd come back here and then go up there for like 3 months at a time. Well, he fell in love, came back here, brought her back here, and then went back up there and didn't come back.
Don't blame him.
No, I don't.
Alaska's
I don't.
still...
And they're still together. They've got a kid and seemed like everything's going really good. But he had always said that he'd try to help me out on caribou hunting or whatnot if I ever wanted to come up. So I have contact up there. I just haven't done it. I guess I'm not to the point where I feel like I have that much free time that I can start doing that. But maybe that's soon. I don't know. I'm not getting any younger.
The thing
I'm
about
44.
a bucket list hunt is you're not getting any younger. So it's better to do it when you're not ready.
I agree.
Right?
No, you're right. It probably needs to be next year, following year thing. And you start trying to do that. But I think
Have you been to Alaska?
I went fishing in Alaska with my buddy Greg once.
Out of?
I don't even remember now. We went halibut fishing and then did a little bit of salmon fishing.
Did you fly into Anchorage?
No, I don't remember. I honestly don't. I know I had a great time. It was a lot of fun, but no, it was southern. It was.
And then it's
I don't remember the name. And it was a tiny little fishing village thing. Like there was one car rental place. All the cars were shit.
Yeah.
And there was like 3 roads on the island or the area where you could only get back to the airport. That was it. Mm-hmm. And stuff came into the airport, and people came in and left on the airport, and that was it.
Yeah.
And we went and saw a glacier or something on the last day. We all had a heck of a time. We all caught several halibut, and I caught a salmon. I think I caught the biggest salmon out of all of us. Never found out if I would get seasick or not, because I just took the Dramamine or whatever you take. They said, just take it, because if you get sick, you're screwed.
Yeah.
I do recall being exhausted for standing in one spot for 6 hours or 8 hours or however long we'd go out fishing in a day. I fell asleep at like 4:00, like out cold, didn't wake up till the next day. You don't realize how much work you're in when you're in the ocean and the waves and you're moving back and forth and you're trying to stay upright. Mm-hmm. You don't realize how much your body's moving. Oh man, it wiped me out. But great time. But that's been my only time to Alaska.
Ketchikan.
That might be it.
It's like there's only a couple major hubs you can fly into in Alaska. Ketchikan's in the very south. They call it the southeast, I think. But
yeah, it's probably that.
Yeah, it's only like 2 hours from Seattle or something. Yeah. It's much less of a flight than it is to Anchorage. But I don't want to blow up Alaska, but dude, Alaska's still the Wild West, man. There's still so much wild opportunity in Alaska.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can blow up Alaska. I'm very sure people will go.
I know, they know
There's a lot of
about
them
it.
that go.
They know about it. But
yeah, what did I was listening to Rogan with Cam Haynes on it today. I was listening to that today and yesterday, and Haynes said that 95% of Alaska is public.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
95% of that entire
The whole time I was
state
driving
is
through
public
Alaska,
access.
I was just looking at maps and everything's public, dude. It's still, I don't know. Alaska actually reminded me quite a bit of where I grew up. It had a lot of similarities in the areas I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
In that meaning that it was just wild and largely public. And, most of the people that were there were kind of, that was of great value to them. You know what I mean? So Alaska's got a lot to see, and it's so big. And I mean, the difference between the southeast and, the northern tundra, I mean, you're talking about, going from Washington to maybe Nevada. It's just, it's vast, man.
Big and
it's
vast.
Massive.
Yeah.
So many mountain ranges. And
My dad did a 28-day float trip in Alaska.
yeah, that's sick.
And he shot a caribou, and guy he was with shot a moose. And that's the only time he ever went. But yeah, 28 days.
That's deep,
Crazy.
dude.
Wow. My dad, when he did something, man, he did like the upper end of whatever it was. It didn't matter, man. He was just, that's what I'm doing. I can't remember. I think when he went to Africa, he went for like that long. We're going for 3 or 4 weeks or something.
I'm in his camp, man. If you're going to go somewhere deep, and for us, it's not super deep because we can get there pretty quick.
Yeah.
But for most people, it's a long push. And if you're going to go somewhere that's a long push, take the time to be there.
Yeah, I contemplated the driving versus flying thing or whatnot. But
That's a road trip I would love to do, but damn, it'd be deep. That'd be deep.
Yeah, bring like 3 or 4 spare tires with you. I hear that. The Alcan, isn't that the highway or what's the?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's the Alcan Highway or something. It's brutal. Yeah, a lot of good tires because you blow tires on that thing. But that would be, I mean, it'd be nice to be able to take your own rig and bring whatever gear you wanted with you. But it takes you 2 days to drive there or something like that if you're pushing it.
I think it's 40 hours of drive time or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you'd have a hard
And
taking
then
turns.
plus, how far do you want to go into Alaska, right? Then
Yeah,
you could probably drive another 25 hours up from there or whatever. Crazy.
bonkers. But it would be nice to take all your
Be
gear.
the road
no
trip
matter
of a
what.
lifetime for sure.
Yeah, a lot of people do it.
Yeah. So caribou, and then you itching for anything else?
Caribou has always been the one. I'd like to shoot a moose. I haven't gone moose hunting, although I don't think it's as luxurious or exciting as some of these other things. I mean, I've killed mule deer, I've killed whitetail. I'm sure I'll do blacktail and Roosevelt at some point. I've killed Yellowstone elk. I kind of want to hunt everything. Was always kind of my hope someday. Hunting a bear that you authentically are worried about getting killed by would be kind of cool. Like I've black bear hunted a ton. I've been around grizzly, but not very often, but never been hunting one. And I've never been afraid that a black bear was going to kill me. It might come at me. We might get in a fight. We might get attacked or something like that. But it's like back of my brain is like, it's not going to kill me. Like it's not going to eat me. It might, attack me and freak out and take off or something because it's not sure what's going on. But a grizzly or a brown bear or a polar bear, I'm food. So it would be, I think it would be really exciting and interesting to hunt something that you authentically believed might try to eat
It's one of
you.
those things where you don't really know if you have the cojones to do it until you just do it, right? Because you can't go practice it.
No. You don't know how you're going to react until you get in that situation. You might hide in a corner because you're just terrified. Or you might be as fearless as one thinks they probably are in that scenario until you're faced with it. But I'm trying to remember the video that I watched. It was an older one where these guys were floating down a river and they were bear hunting. And you saw like a cub out of the corner, and then a freaking sow comes running into the river at their boat. And the guy's got a revolver in his hand, and he just turns his head and fires and hits the water in front of the bear, and the bear stops and backs up. But it was mauling that boat on film, camera running right at it, and was like, "Oh yeah, that's fear, that's legit. Oh my god, who's going to react how in that situation, right?" I mean, there's so many instances of people getting attacked, and it's pretty common. So I mean, as far as attacks go, it's not like common like car wreck common, but it's common enough that there's a good chance it's going to happen to you.
Well, and it's becoming more common because we have a growing population of grizzly bears in the continental U.S.
We do, but they're cute and cuddly. We need to let them survive and multiply.
Why would they fear a human, right?
Yeah, if they're not getting hunted, it's like wanting to hunt moose in an area where it's draw only is kind of dumb. And I only say that from the standpoint is they have no reason to fear you. They're not getting hunted. Like in one entire giant area,
I get what you're saying.
like 5 moose might get killed a year, right? I mean, they're more scared.
You're saying it's less challenging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How is this animal is just going to be curious because any interaction it's had with a person has related in curiosity, not a threat, because they're not hunted. So you go like hunt moose in a place where moose is an over the counter tag, like Alaska, that would be a different story.
Well, I don't have my facts in front of me, but Wyoming tried to issue a couple tags, which would have been a good precedent because it would have been the first tags issued in the continental U.S. since they went on the endangered list or whatever. And they just got massive blowback from, I think it was from the Fed and maybe special interest groups or whatever. And I don't think the hunt went through. So it's kind of one of those weird things where they took away the season, put it on the endangered list, and then they hit the objective, right? Or pushed past the objective. And then they were like, okay, we're going to issue, it was like 4 tags or whatever, which would have been a big deal because mainly for precedent, right?
Yeah, it's like, hey, guess what? We can start hunting these animals again.
Yeah. And it didn't go through.
Does that go to show you it's actually about management or is it about something else?
Oh, man, it's a deep rabbit hole we probably don't want to get caught in.
Too early on this episode? Or not too late on this episode to get into? But
man.
It's hard to believe that
Politics
any of that's...
are tough.
Yeah, it's hard to believe any of it's about management. It appears to be more about making the right people happy and not...
That's a good way to put it.
And when your focus is on trying to make certain people happy, not what's best about the science or the balance of the system, we're all fucked.
Yeah, and people end up voting on wildlife issues, and it's like, how the fuck did that ever happen?
Yeah. Well,
because that should be a science-based conversation of which states hire experts and have big budgets for. And not that I'm saying that they're perfect, but it totally negates any interest when it's not treated as a resource. It's treated as a feeling. Okay, how do you wake up this morning? How do you feel? You feel like you got to take a shit? Then you go take a shit, but that has nothing to do with the balance of the resource. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
it's so sticky, dude.
Yeah. Well, and
then anyone who's good at advertising or marketing can be like, "Oh, we're going to run a marketing campaign that's going to play on their emotions," right? I mean, you could make a tearjerker of any kind of, and just be like, "Oh, look at this crazy incident that happened in this rare situation," and paint it out to be way worse than it is.
Sure.
When the fact of it is, like, more people that day probably got in a car accident.
Oh yeah. No, when the state of Washington allows legislation on fish and game things to be put up to a vote to the public, whereas I think Idaho is their game management is determined by their people. Montana, their game management is determined by their people. I'm pretty sure.
Well, the most recent event that I keep thinking about is it happened in Canada, where Western Canada outlawed the brown bear hunting by vote. And, that vote was controlled largely by Vancouver or whatever. And the city
people that are never around a brown bear.
Yeah, and then you have all these people in rural Canada that actually have to put up with these bears. And I feel for them, because that sucks. And you're being regulated by people who are out of touch with the situation. And they weren't necessarily presented the numbers either.
Well, no, and most of that, I mean, let's be real. If you live in a big city and you're voting, how many of them actually really know what they're voting about? They know the little one sentence line about what this is, and that sentence frequently doesn't actually relate back to exactly what it's about. But this state outlawed bear baiting and hound hunting like a long time ago. Well, and to me, those are two different things, right? And that was on one initiative, which in itself is unconstitutional, but that went by the wayside 15 years ago. Now they cram all kinds of crap into one vote, which I don't get, but that was the most effective and really the only effective way to hunt cougar, right? Mountain lions, very hard to hunt without hounds, without dogs. And bear were most common to hunt with bait and hound. And it's still going on. They're paying hound guys to come in and maintain and manage because they can't manage it. And meanwhile, it was something that people would pay to do.
Right.
It's still happening.
Yeah, you flip-flop the
How
balance
in the
sheet.
world are we paying? Yeah, we went from creating revenue for this task to charging or having to pay for it to be done. The same thing is still happening. Like, what the frick?
And that happens almost in every situation that gets outlawed. Like, California is the recent example, too, of outlawing a lot of their predator hunting.
Yeah.
And then when their predators become a problem, okay, and they're going to pay a lot for that to happen. And then you got to pay a lot for it to happen time over time again. And you're flip-flopping the balance sheet, right? Where one thing was generating cost, now it's sinking cost.
Yeah, but you know what they successfully done in California by that?
I have no idea.
Lowered the number of people that hunt,
Yeah.
right? And lowered the number of huntable game species. So they're just a couple steps away from outlawing hunting altogether. Then once you've outlawed hunting, you don't need guns no more. You're not hunting. And believe me or not, or call me a crazy conspiracy theorist, that's what the point is. That's why they're doing what they're doing. That's why they've always wanted to do what they're doing. They're trying to get your guns. Period. Which, hey, I sell archery stuff. I don't sell guns. I can guarantee you if they outlawed guns, I'd sell way more bows. But that's what they're doing. And I don't like having rights restricted or taken away from anybody for any reason unless it's completely justified. But you put yourself in a system where you take away hunting, and it's a lot easier to take away firearms. That's the justification for why you need them. Well, I go hunting. I go protect myself in the woods. Well, there's no animals. What do you need to hunt?
Yeah.
I can't understand the logic of a place that tries to set it up to eliminate animals to hunt when they're animal rights people, right? Nor manages or maintains their forests at all.
Yeah.
Like, God, I get the feelings, but you're letting your feelings get in the way of logic
Exactly.
altogether, and that's asinine. You're not going to get anywhere that way.
Feelings are in front of logic. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, you can't put your feelings in front of logic. There's no way around it.
And I think
life sucks, and sometimes the reality of things are painful, and you got to deal with that.
Yeah. The thing that group could be educated on more, or I bet largely doesn't understand, is that tags go back into the conservation of the species.
Yeah, those animals are there because we hunted them.
That's a hard concept to portray.
There was almost no game 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't exist. Almost everything was hunted to extinction in the United States. And the only reason that we have the game that we have the management that we have, is hunters' revenue. Our money is why those animals are there. All those things that you love and you want to protect, they wouldn't even be there without our money.
Or
near the health.
Less of them or whatever.
They'd all be gone.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even exist. They'd been hunted to extinction. And it almost did. I mean, we had open markets for wild game. Like, you could hunt wild game and sell it. You go out, kill animals, go sell them to people. No limits, no tags, no issuing, no nothing. And almost everything got hunted to extinction. And the government may or may not have tried to kill the Native Americans' food source at one point. I mean, that was a policy. They'd run buffalo off cliffs because that's what most of them lived on. Made them easier to manage. Just some poor choices, but hey, is what it is.
Anyway, that tag money goes back into the conservation of the species, and that's a good thing.
Well, if you want them to be there.
Yeah. They're valuable.
But their actions show that they don't want them to be there. The groups that make the decisions that go down this path, their actions show that they don't want them. Like, why in the world do you want massive amounts of predators? Kills all the game, right? They got to eat. There's logic to that.
Yeah.
Massive amounts of predators means way less game, or if any. I mean, it's not like you can go sit down with a group of 500 wolves now that started at 3 and say, okay, guys, we got to lower the number of elk you're killing here. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to run out. Well, you can't have that. That doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I think that's hard to know. It's like the coyote and the rabbit thing. From science class, like, one population goes up and eventually they do find some kind of balance because they have to have some kind of food, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's not another animal involved.
That's right.
But now
so
we're
they
talking
go to
about
the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've got coyotes, bears, cougars, wolves. That's a lot of predators. You know, and two of which you can barely effectively hunt, and one you can't. And the other, coyotes you can kind of hunt any which way you want, but I don't think they're really taking a big chunk out of the ecosystem. But cougars and bears now are way more difficult to hunt in this state. And we decided that our feelings thought we shouldn't be able to hunt them in the spring for one reason or another. I'm not sure why our feelings said spring's not okay, but fall's fine. Whatever the hell that is. Doesn't make any sense.
That sucks, dude, because Washington would be such a fun spring bear hunt.
It'd be so good. It'd be great. It'd be a great bear hunting.
We have such a good bear hunting state.
We really do.
And the spring would be...
Well, and why do we have such a good bear hunting state, Tim?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we took away the effective ways to hunt them, and then we added more predators, so we pushed them out into areas that wouldn't naturally be in, so they're easier to see, easier to access, easier to get at. And by the way, there's more of them.
Mm-hmm. Now we get 3 bear tags.
Yeah, but during that whole time, what are we doing? Oh, we have less deer. We have less elk. Why? Because those animals are eating them. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Tough deal, man.
The public shouldn't be making hunting and fishing decisions. They don't know. I mean, should the public be able to vote on what medical decisions occur to the public?
Right.
No, we would have doctors make those decisions, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Yet the public can decide what happens to the population of animals, but not people. Like, this is idiotic.
Yeah. Policymaker is one thing, but on the actual side, on the actual management side.
Yeah. And it's not a shocker that the decisions that occur in these areas happen to be vote a particular way, but with their hearts, not their minds. Oh man, I probably pissed somebody off with that one.
Well, we're talking to largely hunters, but
should you just cut that out? I'm probably going too far.
I don't know. I mean, you say it because you care, right? And that's the thing that I think goes unmeasured so often is like hunters care. You could argue the most, and we probably do.
I have spent my entire life in one facet or another caring about hunting and the game that I hunt.
Yeah.
As my whole position in my life. What anti-hunter can say that?
Exactly. Or who spent more time close to animals, Yeah.
And I don't mean in a zoo.
Hunters innately, exactly, in the wild. Hunters innately love animals and the interaction.
Yeah.
It's just, by the way, they choose to take a certain, or hope to, how many people hunt and don't get anything, right?
The majority. 90+%.
Yeah.
Yeah. 8% success rate is average.
Yeah.
In a tag. So that means 92% of people go home without something.
But their time, their effort, their money.
Yeah. Also went to maintaining and managing those animals. The money.
Yeah. Anyway, fire's out. We love hunters. We love archers.
All hunters. All hunters are great.
Yeah.
Period.
And what do we got? Any closing statements?
I'm sorry if I'm really opinionated. I don't know.
Just opinionated because you care.
I've watched it my entire life, and it's so hard to see what's going on and feel like you're helpless to do anything about it.
Well, and I've really been invested in the West in the last decade, but even in the last decade, I mean, you just watch one thing disappears here, and then it disappears in another area, but those things don't come back.
No.
So fighting for what you have, I think, is really important. Even if what you have, you're not necessarily vested in, right? Like, because once you lose it, it's not coming back, and likely not coming back, and that's not cool, right?
No, the thing that makes America unique is our ability to hunt and fish. Anyone has the access to it.
Yeah.
Right, and I don't want our country to lose that. I don't want our children to lose that. I don't want our grandchildren to lose that. I don't want their children to lose that. There's something deeply connective to that style of life, and whether you've experienced it or not, or feel like it's wrong or not, I encourage everybody to try to experience it at least once, because it will change you in a way that you cannot describe. And look at Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was either going to be vegan or hunt, because everything else just didn't seem right.
Yeah.
And you'll never get him to stop hunting, no matter what. And that's an open-minded liberal dude that some people might consider a conservative now just because his views has changed over time as he grew up, got older, and started thinking with his head a little more. Maybe some of them skew a little because it's great to be ideologically open and fair at 20 because you haven't experienced a whole bunch of stuff. But the older you get, the more you think with your head a little more and realize there's consequences to these choices. And I've seen it throughout my whole life. I've watched this state change so much on its hunting, its fishing. It's just it's getting so rough. Like if I wasn't already vested here so much, I wouldn't still be here. I'd just leave the state because it's getting pretty pathetic.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Hey,
out.
That's a pod. Subscribe.
There you go. Shameless plug.